She lost so much weight. You think she has an eating disorder?
Mom, I can't eat that.
You look like Gwyneth Paltrow on food stamps.
What's your major again?
Women and gender
No
studies.
funny business with Maya.
Thank you so much for this interview and congrats on the movie. I know this is not an autobiographical film, but I know it draws some inspiration from your own life. So if you could just tell me a little bit what inspired you to tell this story.
I made the short film this is based on in college, and I, for practical reasons, wanted to set it in a setting that I understood really well so I could write it easily, or easier than I could for any other environment. So I think I was inspired to tell a story about a young woman who had to sort of confront or face different versions of herself that she's being pressured to be. And I think that, you know, sort of putting two parts of your life that don't mesh well together, like your sex life or your work life with your family, can create great contrast and discomfort. So that's where the idea came from.
This is a comedy that often feels like a horror movie or a psychological thriller, both in I think in the camera choices, but also the score and the sound design. So can you tell me a little bit of how these elements came together and what were you trying to achieve?
I think that I was drawn to psychological thrillers because I was just nervous about keeping an audience engaged while they're in one house in one day. I just think there's so much room for them to wonder why they haven't left and why we haven't moved on to the next day. So I watched a lot of movies that did that successfully, and most of them were really tense. And the main one that I kept coming back to was Krisha. I honestly just wanted the audience to feel anxious, and I wanted to be able to communicate Danielle's anxiety as the most important thing that we should be paying attention to in the movie, because she doesn't get many moments by herself, you know, where she gets, or with people who she gets to honestly talk to about how she's feeling. So I wanted it to feel as tense as her brain felt, and I definitely showed my cinematographer references from Krisha or from, you know, like Cassavetes movies or just other random thrillers like Black Swan or other things. And then I did the same thing throughout every stage, and then definitely, yeah, when it came to the score as well, for sure.
I was going to ask you about the location, because I know that keeping to one location is a common recommendation when you're doing your first film or an independent film, but not everyone works that so well as you guys did. Because of course, I mean, I know you needed some kind of repetition would help that anxiety and the kind of claustrophobia, but you can't repeat too much because you still want us to be engaged. I was wondering, what location is that? Like, did you guys was it someone you knew that lived there? Because you guys seem to have a lot of time to figure things out, or was it not like that at all?
We did have time to figure things out. That's like the only thing we did have time for, weirdly. We didn't know the owners, but we found it off of Airbnb, and Airbnb doesn't let you do that. So we sort of sent our number and code to different people, and then asked them if they would be interested in meeting. And so we found this incredible house in Brooklyn, which meant that it could be a New York City production, which meant that we didn't have to drive everyone to set, and that made things cheaper. Yeah, I don't know, someone blessed us with this house because it had just enough room for all the actors to have their own like rooms, and it looked exactly like I wanted to, and it also had wonderful owners who gave us a lot of time to come to the space and look around. So I made a Lego set based off of the floor plan of the first floor of the house, and my cinematographer and I used that when we were creating the shot list. But then we also got to come to the house a few times, and we got a week in the house talking through our shot list with our producers, who could tell us what we could or couldn't afford in terms of if we were going to have wide shots of the whole room that should be filled with extras, or if we would need to sort of switch to close-ups, or if we would need to combine shots, or they just made it realistic because we couldn't have every actor we wanted on every day for full wides with everybody, etc. So thankfully we had the time in the house to figure that all out.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Another element that I think is very important in your story is that Danielle, is a sex worker that doesn't have to be a sex worker, so doesn't need to be. I feel like the story could have been very different if you had made her have to be, a very poor student who's, suffering a lot. in the way that you did it, I think it opens a kind of an interesting discussion about sexuality and how is or isn't sexuality related to self-worth. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about what was going through your mind when you were just working on that element of the story.
Totally. I think that the thing that Danielle is struggling the most with, that I was sort of struggling the most with and put into her, was self-worth, and figuring out a way for my self-worth to exist beyond sexual validation and sexual empowerment, or whatever that is supposed to mean. I think that within, just in general, being a young woman, I think that like when you find that power, it feels like ecstasy, because you have no other power in the world that you've discovered yet, at least. And then you realize it has limits, and you're sort of realizing it can't solve everything. And I felt my friends and I all having that moment, not all of us, throughout college. And I saw seeking arrangement and sugaring play into all of that, because hookup culture already sucks so much, I think, in college, or, you know, it's just there whether you like it or not. And I think that hookup culture already feels so transactional. And my friends and I all wanted to be dating the people that we would sometimes get the privilege to have sex with, and then not know if we were going to see them for months or weeks, or etc. And seeking arrangement and sugaring, sort of, there was an allure of this alternative of like a structured situation that was slightly guaranteed to give you validation, and, you know, was there for you to feel admired, and obviously to pay you, but there was consistency there that was appealing. Whether it ended up feeling good or not, or fulfilling your needs, or the empowerment or the validation, is another story. But that was something that attracted me to sugaring, and attracted a lot of my friends too. So that's the only sort of perspective of sex work that I can relate to on a personal level. You know, I don't come from a background where I needed, you know, the money desperately to sugar, so I would feel inauthentic. And at the same time, I think there was something exciting about telling a story about a sex worker that isn't, like you said, like so desperate and sad and depressing, but also one that isn't like glossy and is like, yay, like, you know, like, I don't know, like Diary of a Call Girl, or you know, something that's very like empowering and fun, because there's obviously there's pros and cons. But yeah, I think sex work was contextualized in my college experience in a specific way, and I think I just wanted to showcase that.
Another element of Danielle is that she's a bisexual character, and that's a character we don't see very often. I guess we're seeing a little bit more often, but we still don't see often enough. I know that you were bisexual yourself, so I was wondering if there are any characters in TV or film that were important to you, either personally or professionally?
I think Transparent, Joey Soloway's Transparent, had a huge influence on Shiva Baby overall, in terms of tone and story and you know, themes. But there were so many sexually fluid characters in that show. And right at the beginning, one of the sisters is openly bisexual, and everybody knows it. But I mean, no one even ever says that word. So that had a big impact on me. And I think television has done a much better job of showcasing sexual fluidity, partly maybe because there's more time to flesh those full stories out with different partners. So I was very influenced by, like, I don't know, growing up, there were always like moments, at least in like procedural dramas or, you know, high school shows like The OC or Grey's Anatomy that had queer characters like that. But also like Schitt's Creek, like Dan Levy's character, you know, Atypical. There's just a lot of great representation, or, you know, maybe there needs to be more still, but in television. So I think that's where I've found the most encouragement in terms of portraying bisexual characters from.
And Emma, you're also a very young director. I'm not sure about this. I was trying to figure it out, but I think you're the youngest director I've ever interviewed in my website, which is just about women in film. And I had it for 6 years, so that's quite a long time. And I mean, I know in film there's a hierarchy, you know, you're the director, you're the one who gives the directions. But I assume there are moments where you have to assert your opinions, or you have to say no to ideas that you don't think are good. and you're working with actors who are not only older than you, but very experienced, and some of them are even filmmakers themselves. So I was just wondering, was it something you had to learn to do that, to assert your opinions, or was it totally natural, not a problem at all? How was that for you?
It was very difficult. I'm obviously, yeah, being a young person, being a woman, and then also being Canadian, it is not my natural instinct to assert myself. So it came in waves of figuring out how to do so. I think initially I just had total imposter syndrome and felt terrified, and I had to call my friend, my filmmaker friend, who's also a young woman, and she had to talk me off the ledge the night before we started shooting. I was like, I can't do this. Like, these actors aren't going to listen to me. Like, why would they listen to me? This doesn't make any sense. Like, this is a joke. And she sort of reinstated what I learned throughout the process, which is it's my job for me to tell them what to do. And they're all looking at me to do that. That's just the function of what I'm here to do. So if I don't do that, I'm not going to do my job well. And so of course they're going to listen to me, and of course they're going to want me to control and give direction. So yeah, I worked through it. I think that sort of initial just terror went away pretty quickly, but there's a give and take. I think I definitely struggled to figure out how much to collaborate on and how much to put my foot down on and assert myself and assert my vision. But I'm a pretty stubborn person. And so by the end, I was almost so frustrated that I was just saying no to everything. And it was mostly coming from Polly, who I love very much, but she's a filmmaker. And she's just a very opinionated woman. I love her so much, but she would come to set constantly with new ideas and suggestions. And by the end, I just wanted to shut everything down. But thankfully, the things that I did let her, contribute to and the suggestions I took that really changed what I was going for ended up, working out so beautifully. And then I sort of, after the fact, I listened to stories of directors talking about how one scene was supposed to be written one way and one actor or the DP or somebody suggested something and it became something totally different. So it's tough because you want there to be room for scenes to change and grow and evolve and take on that like movie magic happening in real time. But when are you being talked down to? Like, should you genuinely be listening? Like, it's really hard to sort of go through it all. But yeah, I think that was the hardest thing to sort of figure out while directing, and I assume it's going to continue to be hard no matter as the projects get bigger or whatever ends up happening.
Yeah. And this time you wrote about something that you know quite well, universes that you know quite well, and I know that's also something that is recommended to first films. But I'm curious about what kind of things are you interested in doing now? I mean, either types of stories or genres of films. Do you have certain, or is this what you want to keep exploring, that kind of thing? Like, what do you see ahead?
I would honestly like to be able to try everything, and I hope to be able to attack every genre before I die. I really want to do true horror, and I really want to do Westerns. I really want to do action films. But I also want to continue to tell my small character-driven stories also. I think initially I only ever saw myself doing these kinds of Jewish or queer or, young female-driven, not young female because I'll get older, but these kinds of stories. And then I sort of realized that that's something that I think is sort of told to young female filmmakers, like, or you sort of subconsciously sort of believe you can only do stories that you can personally fully identify with. So I've had fun in the last year, thinking about books or articles or things that I are not Jewish or queer or have a direct connection to me, but that I think I could lend my perspective to. So I'm having fun sort of changing that perspective that I think I had for a very long time and opening myself up. So I hope to, I don't know, I'm very open. I hope to be able to do as much as I can.
Hi, Daddy.
Hi, sweetie.
Tell me truthfully how I look.
Shall we go in, everybody?
Mom, who died?